Shamangelic Healing Podcast is designed as a platform to share authentic conversations about real life issues, providing you with valuable resources and tools to support you in shining your most authentic self, creating a thriving life that you absolutely love, and to support you in manifesting your soul's mission. Welcome to this episode of the Shamangelic Healing Podcast. This is for everybody. We're going to dive into all things addiction, and let's be honest, everybody has an addiction to something. And my dear, beautiful soul brother, Luke Storey, and I dive into all things addiction. We're looking at the causes, the emotional traumas, and whether it's addiction to our phones, whether it's addiction to a substance, alcohol, drugs, whether it's addiction to sex or pornography or working. We just dive into what are the causes, what are the remedies, and what is the process? What is the journey to diving into healing the core wounds so that you don't have to reach for that addiction any longer? And what is the process of reclamation, self-forgiveness, and forgiving others that have been a part of your trauma, as well as forgiving yourself on the journey. And this guest, Luke, he has been through the fires of addiction. He started at a young age from his own physical trauma, his own childhood trauma, that brought him into drug addiction at a young age, heroin, alcohol, crack. And if this is somebody that can walk through those fires of addiction and come out the other side, and is now leading one of the top international podcasts with 6 million downloads, the Lifestylist podcast, this is definitely somebody that's turned their life around and has something for sure for everybody here. A humble, beautiful story about his journey that we can all benefit from and that we can all learn from, because we all have some triggers, we all have some pain or some wound where we're reaching for a phone or food or Netflix or sex or someone or something to help us feel whole, to help us feel safe, to help us feel included. So you are going to absolutely love this podcast, and you got to go check out Luke and the Lifestylist podcast for sure. We'll have all of his links and his connections of where to find him, and I'm going to be on his show as well, so check that out. As well, because we talk about the core wounds of the inner child, we have a free gift for you, and that is a guided meditation to heal the inner child. It's a beautiful guided journey, so check the show notes, get that free gift, check out the Lifestylist podcast, and all of Luke Storey's info will be included in the show notes. So please buckle in. This was a long conversation, and it is deep with we covered so much. And he's such an inspiration around biohacking, spirituality, consciousness, and living a lifestyle of vibrant wellness. Welcome to this episode about shifting addiction to liberation with Luke Storey. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Shamangelic Healing Podcast, joined here with my dear soul brother, Luke Storey, and we're going to dive into all things related to addiction and breaking addictions. And let's just face it, we're all navigating with some form of addiction, and I really respect, Luke, that you have walked this journey into the fire, almost devoured by it, and out the other side and helping other people through it. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. And welcome to Sedona.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. It's been a while. And I find it always very grounding and nourishing to be here. And it's great to be able to meet some people this time. I've come in the past just on a vacation and just kind of rolled through and, did the things and got out. But this was a much longer trip and had the opportunity to explore some community here. So it's been a much different experience and really nice. Yeah.
Right? We're getting on the land and feeling the medicine, and super, super sweet.
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge that everybody's navigating through some form of addiction. I mean, this conversation is for everybody. And I want to dive into what is underneath the reach for validation, the reach for sex, the reach for the phone, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, whatever you're reaching for to sedate, ignore, distract, numb. Like, what, in your experience, what is underneath that? What is underneath the reach for a substance or an experience?
It's such a deep topic, and there's so many facets to it. But I think a starting place based on that question would be attraction and aversion. We're wired to avoid pain. Thank God, right? I mean, if you walked up the stairs and hit your knee and it didn't hurt, you'd probably keep hitting it, right? But that goes for emotional pain. So we're wired to escape feeling uncomfortable. And we're also wired to pursue pleasure. And so human beings are really set up to habituate themselves toward both of those extremes. And for some reason, and I'm sure we'll get into this, and I've yet to figure this out, it's one of life's great mysteries to me. For some of us, people like me, and most of my friends, if not all of them, well, not all, but the vast majority of friends that I've had for the past 24 years since I've been free of some of the most destructive addictions, is that, they shapeshift the things that we use to seek comfort from, change and evolve, and those things that we use to numb ourselves, change and evolve too. Yeah. And some of us are wired to have the experience where drugs and alcohol, like strong mind-altering substances, make us feel whole and complete. And that was the case for me for when I was a kid. And we'll get in, of course, why it was necessary to numb the pain and where the pain came from. But I know people that had similar experiences as kids, trauma, divorce, etc. And if they ever tried drugs and alcohol, it didn't give them this feeling of being at home. It gave them a headache, or they got dizzy, or they got paranoid, and they just kind of left it alone. And maybe they developed some other dysfunctional coping mechanism, or maybe they just integrated and learned how to deal with being a human and all that comes with it. But someone like me, the first time I did drugs and alcohol, it was like the experience of oneness and the end of suffering. And it was temporary, of course, in each moment, and then I had to keep pursuing it. But it's interesting that some of us are wired to where if we're in emotional pain, we get drunk and all the pain goes away and we feel amazing.
Well,
and for some people it doesn't work like
exactly.
that,
Exactly.
Like I have two brothers, right? They grew up in a couple years apart. They're half brothers, so they're quite a bit younger than I. But they had a pretty similar experience, right? Same parents, same divorce, same schools, the whole thing, and had their share of pain and discomfort, I'm sure, as kids. For one of them, he was like me, and he's now sober, thankfully. The minute he found drugs, it was just like the be-all, end-all to all problems. The other brother never has ever found any relief from drugs and alcohol, or really developed any profound addictive tendencies to anything.
Right. So what I'm hearing is some of us are wired differently when it comes to substances and how we interact with substances.
It certainly seems so.
Yeah.
I mean, my fiance Allison, I don't do recreational drugs, but I have done some plant medicines in the past couple of years, and done very intentionally, and perhaps we'll get into that at some point, but definitely not seeking a means to escape, but to really do some deep healing and some deep shadow work. For her, the experiences that she's had even with that are so much different, because she doesn't enjoy being full on. She's just not extreme, you know, and for some reason, I'm just someone who's always been extreme, whether it's on, you know, the negative side and doing things that are self-destructive, or in all of the healing work and spirituality and doing things that are very constructive and building. You know, some of us, I think, are just wired with that kind of all or nothing level of temperance and temperate. What's that word?
Temperance. Temperament.
Temperament. Thank you. And I seem to be born that way, and many people are, and I've always been fascinated by that. In all my years of recovery, it's just so strange that some people seem to have a DNA code that just lends itself to becoming addicted, and some not so much.
And so there's a propensity, perhaps, propensity for certain addictions, and it seems like that there's, you know, depending on our personality, depending on our background, our pain, we may have a propensity for different types of addictions. And it might be for a parent's approval, and that's just more socially acceptable than, you know, a drug addiction where turns into a junkie, where you can be an attention junkie and you can be a success junkie and you can be a fitness junkie, and it can be rewarded in a way that isn't as is more socially acceptable than the other addictions. Sugar addiction, coffee addiction. It's like, oh, isn't this funny? Isn't this like? And so we might not notice that there's that propensity for other addictions as well. They're just more socially acceptable. They're just more glamorous. They're more common, and they're not so much like those ones that we think of like, oh, that dark, seedy kind of drug addiction thing that has a different flavor and a different feeling to it, of like, oh, well, that's me, so then I must not be addicted. So what was underneath? Your particular journey was, you know, at a young age, you went full on.
Yeah.
At a young age, you were like full on, and like what happened? Like I'm always curious with almost 20 years of working with people around addictions, whether it's cigarettes or alcohol or whatever, sex, you name it. What was going on at the time before the reach for the thing? So, you know, paint for us a picture of what was happening for you in your childhood before any addiction pattern started for you.
You know, it's funny, we were going through a bin that I pulled out of the closet of old photos from just my whole life. I just have this huge, one of those Target plastic bins, and you know, I'm born in 1970, pre-digital camera, so I just inherited all these photos and used to take a lot of photos and things, and my parents were, I guess, somewhat avid photographers, because there's a lot of pictures of me when I was a little kid, which is nice, you know, you feel loved. But I was looking at some, and there were photos around the age of 4, and I picked up this one particular photo, and Allison saw the same photo, and we both kind of looked at each other, and there was this profound innocence in that photo. And I thought about, you know, why that was, and I was looking at the timeline, and that photo was taken before I was sexually abused. Yeah. And there was just a different energetic quality to my personality and just my beingness at that point. And so, you know, it's no surprise to me that there was a huge punctuation mark at the time. I must have been 5 or 6 or something like that I had this experience, or a couple experiences. And I mean, even before I got sober, I knew that there was a turning point when I had that experience, and that trauma had really warped my personality. And so there's been a really profound journey around exploring that, and really finding all of the different levels to that experience. You know, there's the first stages of going, oh shit, something happened to me when I was a kid and it really hurt me, right? And so there's talk therapy, and there's crying, and there's, you know, just the unraveling of the shame that was associated with the secrecy of those experiences, which started for me at around 14, where I started, you know, doing group therapy and talking about it, and told my parents this had happened and things like that. And then there's the spiritual work that comes into finding forgiveness for the perpetrator and forgiveness for the experience itself. And then further into that, finding, as weird as it might sound to some people who have shared that experience, to finding the gift in that. And then even beyond that, the karmic reality of why some of us have those experiences. So going back to your question, I know, or I've known as an adult, that it was the shame and the pain of that experience that caused me to feel so uncomfortable that I just needed something in order to cope and be in the world, right? With some normalcy, to be able to go to school and be a kid. What I didn't know, and what's been really revelatory for the past few years, is I've, continued to go deeper and just find, why do I not want to put my phone down now? Is it related to that? Why do I refresh Instagram every 30 seconds?
Not that any of us know anything about that.
Yeah. There's a long, chain. There's a hierarchy of addictions, and I think now most of mine are, I wouldn't say harmless, but definitely don't interrupt my life in the way that drugs and alcohol did. But in looking at that early trauma, it's interesting because it's not solely what happens to you, that there was this experience of having my personal space and my body and my boundaries invaded. It was that there was nowhere to take that experience. My parents didn't know. Even if they had, I don't know what their capacity would or wouldn't have been to be able to hold space for that and to work through that. But I think the psychological damage was probably equal to the actual abuse, was just having to hold that.
Right. For a 6-year-old, right? For a 7-year-old,
yeah.
For this age, yeah.
And to have no means by which to contextualize what had happened. And so therein started patterns of dishonesty, lying, secrecy, a disconnection from my caregivers because I couldn't let them know what had happened. Just an underlying sense of feeling different, that there was something wrong with me, just a felt sense of shame. And so with that, another kid that could have had the same experience maybe wouldn't have responded to drugs and alcohol. But for me, probably, 7, 8 years old, I started to, drink and smoke weed and do coke and take pills and just whatever drugs I could find in my environment, which were pretty abundant just due to the, setting that I happened to be in the 70s in Northern California. All the hippies that kind of migrated out of the hate and settled there and grew weed and cooked meth, and it's just there was this convergence of kind of Hell's Angels and hippies, and there was just a real drug culture there, and so it was around, and I found it, and it was just immediate relief.
I want to get with, first of all, I want to be with this connection, this reconnection to innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to just, for anyone that has had a trauma of any kind, of sexual nature, physical abuse, or abandonment, trauma comes in many forms.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge, for anyone listening, just the journey of connecting to the inner child before the event, before
Huge.
the thing. And that's a big part of the healing, it seems, in when I've worked with my clients, is to, and myself, is to remember who I was, the little girl who had like light in her eyes and lots of energy and lots of joy and trusted and loved everybody, and to reconnect with that, to come home to that. And so I want to acknowledge the emotional tenderness of reconnecting to that.
Yeah. So
that aspect of ourselves. You said something earlier, and I really want to dive into this, because you said the drugs and the alcohol made me feel one. And I want to acknowledge that 4-year-old felt that, connected to the one, whole, connected, safe, loved, and that's the wholeness. It sounds like after the trauma or after the, that experience, the drugs and alcohol allowed that imprint to be erased momentarily, so it gave you that opportunity to reset to that 0 point again. But that isn't feeling whole, and because there's a substance altering you in a distorted way, and it's not permanent, it's not sustainable. It's a crutch to come back to the 4-year-old sense of wholeness, of our divine, our divinity, our purity, and our essence. So I want to clarify that, because now we can find ways in which we can find that the authentic oneness without having to sedate or numb a part of our trauma, which is disassociation. And it's not uncommon when a trauma has happened to disassociate from the body. Like you said, I disconnected from family, I disconnected from, probably your child, being a child. And like, hey, not that many 8-year-olds like start hitting the sauce, and pills and pot at that age. And so that's like adulting at 8 years old.
Yeah.
That's going to, adult level sedation at a very young age. And I started drinking, I started smoking and drinking like 12, 14, like in there. And it was like, well, I better just do what everybody else does. And I had my own reasons for sedating, but my question is like, so how do you feel about that?
Well,
about that, like refining or redefining that the drugs or alcohol was taking you to wholeness, but it was just like taking a break from that.
When that experience of trauma happened, and you're so right that it comes in many forms. Sometimes I like to say trauma is what happens to you, and sometimes it's what doesn't happen for you, right? So abandonment or neglect, these are also traumas, and so there was a chain reaction of that trauma, which was something that happened to me, but then there were things that, for whatever reason, didn't happen for me, which is no one's fault. It's just the way that it played out. But in terms of coping with trauma and gravitating toward drugs and alcohol, it's that, I and so many others like me that experience early trauma, you lose your innocence. But really, I had a realization one day that it's innocence, but it's also inner sense. So at 4 years old, 5 years old, I'm starting to develop the little beginnings of the healthy ego and becoming individual and learning that I have a personality and preferences and becoming the little Luke, right? And so there's an inner sense that develops through your childhood years that you start to learn who you are. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, there was a part of that personality that was robbed and had to remain hidden. And then that experience needed to be obscured and became secret. And so who I was really lost. And so that connection to source, to God, to one's self, that is, it's so abundantly clear when you are around babies, they're just with God. They don't have an ego yet. They don't have cognition to the point where they can start making sense of things or being confused by things. They're just in this, usually blissed out state of oneness. And so when I used drugs and alcohol, I was trying to get back to that center point. And many people have the misconception that drugs get you high, that they take you to a higher level of consciousness, when in fact, really what they do is they just remove the blocks that are preventing you from experiencing the higher states of consciousness. And so I had within me, just like I have within me now, an access point to God and oneness. And I perceived, because of that trauma, that I had become disconnected from that. And I felt so separate from family, friends, school, society. I felt so alone. And when I did drugs and alcohol, those feelings of shame and the feelings of anger, hurt, confusion, fear, anxiety, all of those lower emotions were obscured by drugs and alcohol, which gave me the feeling of being high. Delusion, yeah. But our natural state is oneness. And so all I was really doing was creating a facsimile, a false sense of oneness. And thank God there were molecules around that help me to do that,
Yeah.
because I don't know that I would have survived without it. I mean, just to go to elementary school knowing that, or at least sensing that I'm different than these other kids, and there's things happening at home that I can't share and no one would understand, and just that sense of feeling alone. When I would smoke weed, it was like I didn't care about any of that. I felt completely at ease.
Right.
Temporarily, as
I
you
want,
said,
I want
you
to
know.
acknowledge that first of all, when you said, hey, when I was feeling this, there was alone, disconnected, fear, pain, and that seems like that's the cause. Wherever that source for any of us is coming from, as adults, where we feel alone, disconnected, afraid, and or not safe, or not seen, that's whether we're 6, 16, 26, 30, wherever we are in life, that's kind of what's under that. Help me to sedate, help me to connect, help me to release this fear, help me to soften the edges of the pain or numb the pain, that's kind of what's underneath it. And I think for many of us that it buys us some time. What I feel that my addictions have provided for me is it bought me some time from when I had an experience and I reached for something to sedate or numb or whatever, because I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the support, I didn't have the consciousness, I didn't have the resources, the wherewithal, the will, or the maturity, probably all of that, to do the inner healing, to feel the feels, to hold space for my emotions in a way in which would provide me the opportunity to reconnect, feel more whole without that substance. So I know that for me personally, and for for clients that I've worked with at different times, like recognizing that, okay, this bought you some time. We're not here to judge it that you should have sobered up earlier, or you shouldn't have started that addiction, or you shouldn't have, because then we're just adding shame on top of shame. But it's this understanding that at some point there's diminishing returns on the choice to sedate, ignore, numb, and that at some point the diminishing returns, the cost is going to become so high that now this crutch that has bought me some time, I'm going to need to release it, and I'm going to need to learn how to kick off these training wheels. I'm going to reach for those tools that support that truth, that oneness, that is going to bring me back to authentic, sustainable wholeness. So now let's dive into a little bit about the journey of making the choice to sober up.
Well, it's when it's what how do you say it? Let me see. For me, it's when my addictions started doing more to me than for me.
Yeah.
You know?
There's diminishing returns.
Yeah, and so I was willing to pay the cost, which was pretty high, in order to be satiated and to feel some semblance of comfort, and that went on for many years. And so despite the loss of friends and self-respect and any moral code and just all of the self-destructive things that I did, the price was worth paying because it was better than being me. Then at a certain point, over the course of a few years, really, the cost to benefit ratio starts to get skewed. And then it's like I'm paying a really high price in terms of the side effects and consequences of that treatment, to the point where it just doesn't make sense anymore. And it just, you're just digging yourself in a hole. So it's like if you have a headache, you take 1 aspirin, it works. Then you build a tolerance pretty soon. You take 10 aspirin and you still have a headache, and then you're getting ulcers and bleeding out your hind end, and then you're going, well, God, man, I'm, filling the toilet with blood every morning and I still have a headache.
And maybe that's not it,
So at a certain point, and then you try every other form of aspirin or painkiller or whatever it is. And so for me, it was, the case of what I call switching seats in the Titanic, So I would start to run myself into a wall because I'm doing heroin, and that's definitely not a sustainable habit for most of us. And then, it gets really bad with that, and you think, all right, I got to quit that, and I go sequester myself away and do like a train spotting opiate kick, being locked up somewhere, and I would like pay people to lock me away in a room, basically, so I could get off it. And then I get off it, and I'm never doing that again, because being physically addicted to something it's a whole other level. It's just not cute. It seems glamorous when you see it in the movies sometimes, but it's really not. And then I would think, well, I'm not going to do that, but maybe I could smoke crack.
Yeah. Let's try something else.
And then I'd run that to its end, and then stop that, and then start drinking more. And so I was always trading one addiction for another, and then eventually at the end it was just I became addicted to all of it at once, and there was no stopping any of it. It was just full on everything all the time. And I'm 26 years old at that point, living in Hollywood, in the den of iniquity, and I lived in this crazy, like transient apartment building we referred to as Disgrace Land, and it was a total freak. I'm going to do a podcast about that 5 years. Be probably entertaining and tragic, but it was just, I think I had a seed in me that knew what I was doing was going to kill me, and there was just this still small voice that said, you're mostly a piece of shit, but there is just this glimmer of hope that you might be redeemable in some way. And that happened to me, and I didn't realize this for a long time. I actually had that realization on a mushroom journey, which I was doing to escape my problems, to just get drunk, take a bunch of mushrooms, go to a concert kind of thing. And one night, did a hero's dose of mushrooms, and I had basically a kind of a nervous breakdown with my buddy that was just trying to party with me, and I'm sure I was not much fun, but I realized what a shambles my life was and just how pathetic it had all become. And then I remember saying to him, man, I need to get sober, I need to stop all this. And he's like, have another beer, man, what are you talking about?
Right.
Why are you tripping? But that really was, and it took me over 20 years of sobriety to trace that back and go, holy shit, I did have a realization on a mushroom journey that led to me a few months later, through a bunch of other crazy circumstances, to finally surrender and to accept help. And I had a close family member that was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to a couple meetings here and there, just kind of thinking, yeah, I'm not ready for this shit yet, but someday I'll probably end up here. And
there's a little bit more, there's a little, like a slow acceptance, slow, inevitably.
Yeah, and really, it started because I think when I was 14, I got sent to this reform school in Idaho, because I got arrested for breaking into houses, and so I was either going to go to juvenile hall or get sent to the school. And thank God my dad had the resources to send me to this school. And I was there for 2 years, and did a lot of personal development work and therapy, and I got out, and I had healed a lot of stuff. That's where I started looking at my childhood trauma and abuse, and really dealing with that in a healthy way. And I had a lot of support, and I had the first adult in my life that I ever really trusted and listened to. The dean of that school was a really kind and loving man, and just was really supportive of me. And I got out, and I just didn't understand the nature of addiction, that you can't ever touch anything ever again. I didn't understand the complete abstinence principle, and wasn't guided to go to any 12-step groups. I was just, hey, you're fixed, go back to high school. But I did have a 2-year period where I started to build some self-esteem and really learn who I was. And I think that's really the thing that saved my life. So when I was in my 20s living in Hollywood, while most people that I spent time with had never had that experience of really getting some help and having that sunlight of the spirit shine on them for a period, So I would always go back to that. Yeah, I'd always go back to that and be like, this wasn't how this was supposed to turn out. I checked out of that school when I was 16, and 10 years later, here I am in that situation I was in. So I think that, and the catalyst of that experience with the mushrooms really, there was just something I just couldn't ignore anymore, and what I was doing wasn't working to kill the pain. Those lower states that I was trying to suppress and give myself, as I said, that false sense of being high or being in an elevated state of consciousness, it just wasn't working, and now I just have all of these side effects, and my life is just falling apart so quickly, and I sense that I'm really close to going to jail, really close to becoming homeless, I was totally unemployable. No one would hire me. I couldn't get a job doing anything, and I couldn't even really, I was selling drugs. That was my home business. I was my first venture into entrepreneurship. And I couldn't even do that anymore. I just couldn't get it together to let people in and, you know, work the answering machine and the pager and do all the things. I was just incapacitated and basically an invalid, you know, and so...
it's so young.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge a couple things here about what you just said is what I was doing wasn't working anymore. And that kind of speaks to the diminishing returns, whether that's an alcohol addiction, whether that's a phone addiction, whether that's a sex addiction or a pornography addiction or a workaholic addiction. It's like acknowledging that the initial thing underneath, unworthiness, a childhood trauma, a heartbreak, an abandonment issue, whatever it is that is underneath the original addiction, then there's that. Those are what I call the primary cause and the primary pain. Then when we go to the addiction, then that creates what I call like secondary chaos and secondary pain, because then when you're getting drunk and sleeping around, or when you're working all the time, that negatively affects your relationships, or when you are sugar addiction, food addiction, then you're going to have a health consequence. And so now there's like a whole secondary category of impact, traumatic experiences. Now it's your own hand. And for me, it was alcohol was my go-to. Sugar, first and foremost, my first addiction, definitely sugar. Second of all, food, like sugar, and then like foods. Third, right in there, close, like smoking never really landed for me. For some people, their first cigarette, they're like, I'm hooked. For other people, my first cigarette, I'm like, I can't, like it hurts my lungs, I don't like it. You know, it hurts when I go play. I mean, I was literally started smoking at 12, and I was a competitive gymnast. And I remember that when I tried smoking, because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to numb, I wanted to be cool, and it just did not land. That was an easy one for me. And alcohol, tried alcohol, and it didn't take at first, but hey, sometimes you got to stay with it. Yeah. Sometimes you got to stay with it, right? So
you got to commit yourself.
Yeah, you got to commit. So like one of those after throwing up and like getting drunk and being stupid, like at 13 and at 14 and at 15, it is getting drunk and throwing up everywhere. And I didn't realize that like my body can't handle it. Like after taking all these genetic tests years later, I figured out, my body actually cannot handle and metabolize alcohol. And so this is, when you say people are wired differently, I think it also has to do with genetics, where some people have an allergic reaction and they just can't. And some people have it has a different chemical experience. But I want to acknowledge that other part of, now I'm creating bigger messes. Like I've got my core wounding, and then probably some other traumas on top of that, this disappointment, that pain, that heartbreak. Now there's this whole secondary consequence of the shit that I'm creating in my life from not being able to keep a job, in your case, or what I'm doing to my liver, or what I'm doing to my body with foods, or what I'm doing, or people that are having sex addictions, and it's like, okay, I keep getting pregnant, or I keep having STDs. There's all kinds of secondary consequences now that tend to, now I'm going to go and sedate some more. It's like this cycle, this pattern that says, now I feel even more shame about, I cheated on my partner, or I got an STD, or I got drunk again, I lost my job. So now I think there's a whole nother level of that we're dealing with that tends to accelerate, this isn't working any longer. At some point that piles up so much that this isn't working anymore, and this is often what they call that rock bottom or a wake-up call, where it's like, now I'm on the street, like you said, or there's a divorce, or here's this wake-up call with my body saying there's a tumor or a disease. And there seems to be a commonality that invites us to break the pattern, to say, this isn't working anymore. This isn't working anymore. And at 26, and I want to acknowledge for everybody and to ask the question, with any substance, with any person, with any part of your lifestyle, staying up till 3 a.m. watching Netflix, whatever it is. It might be innocence, whether it's just too much coffee, whatever, being a dateaholic, whatever it is. What about it isn't working anymore? What about it is causing more pain than benefit? Like just to have a come to Jesus reality check about what is more of a medicine right now in my life than a poison, and that you're not alone in that experience. Like that it's okay to feel that way. You're not weak, you're not wrong, you're not alone. We're all having these wake-up calls, some louder than others. And at 26, what was it for you that where you're like, okay, I'm going all in with sobriety?
Well, to the point that you're making, addiction is it's so destructive in that it starts to erode your moral fiber. Right? Just your knowingness of not what you learned from your parents necessarily, but just that inner knowing of like, this is right, this is wrong. And that line starts to get very blurry and then eventually just disappears. And this is where people commit crimes and prostitute themselves and steal from their granny and do all of those horrible things that people in acute addiction do. The real tragedy of it is that when you do something against your moral code, your God-given moral code, your higher self knows that your egoic personality self is doing that. The animal self is trying to survive, and you're making decisions that go against the core of who and what you are, which is an individual representation of God, and you are now diverting from your godness and your self with a capital S, and that creates a discord and a compounding of the emotional pain. So every time you act out, for me, it used to be like watching porn. There was a certain point in my recovery I realized, this is not healthy. I don't feel good when I do this. I feel creepy and shameful afterward, and I just don't like it. It's like the high is not worth it anymore. As a kid who, grew up, I oriented myself to sex through pornography. It's just how it was.
You're not alone. For
dirty
sure.
magazines you found in the garage, your uncles or whatever, and then the Betamax. But at a certain point, it's like, I do this thing, then I feel ashamed because I know that there's something. It's not even a moral thing with that, but it's eliciting a sense of who and what I am that is not me, and it doesn't feel good, and so you feel ashamed, like, I can't believe I did that. I'm sober. I'm helping other people. I'm supposed to be this upstanding member of recovery, and here I'm going off and hiding in the corner and closing the curtains and doing this very shameful thing. That shame then comes to the surface, and you start feeling really uncomfortable, so you go do that thing that made you feel shameful again,
or a different substance.
Yeah. And so there really is this this snowball effect to addiction, because we all have that sense of right and wrong inside, and no matter how much you try to numb it out, you just know you're going against the core of who and what you are and why you're here. And so every time one acts out in any addiction, that creates more shame, and then you reach for another addiction, et cetera, on and on and on. So I think for me, it was just like, I'm throwing every addictive behavior in the kitchen sink at that sense of shame, trying to escape, and pretty soon there's just no escape. Everywhere I look, there I am.
Yeah.
And also due to the fact that you just become physically tolerant to drugs and alcohol that you use a lot. It's just like,
we're pretty crafty at justifying it, of like, oh, one more thing, or oh, it's not that bad. This is we're really not the best person to be holding space for ourselves. The part that is very much attached to the thing. When my sister brought to my attention, hey, I think there might be an issue with you and alcohol, I'm like, I could not hear it. What came out of my mouth was not, gee, thanks,
Yeah.
and oh, you're right, because,
Yeah.
and this was somebody who introduced me to alcohol. And so I couldn't hear it from her. And I was so attached that if anyone had tried to take that last drink, that last Cosmopolitan, whatever it was, out of my hand, I'd be in jail right now. And I realized it was like, I couldn't see it. And so we really, I think in that journey of acknowledging addiction, having somebody else that can identify, hey, when you're in the corner with it, when you're hiding it, when there's shame associated with it, where you don't want anybody to know, where you can't go without it, there is an issue. And I remember, my brother dancing with his drug and alcohol addiction for many years, and still working through that. And I always had such judgment standing on the side of his addiction, going, I don't understand why he can't break that pattern. I don't understand why he's not strong enough. And I went to a cleansing retreat, years ago, and the person running the retreat was doing iridology for me, and she was looking at my eyes and my constitution within my physical body, and she just said, I just have one question for you. What is it with you and sugar? And I went blank, and I go, what do you mean? And she goes, yeah, what is it with you and sugar? And it just, I needed somebody to ask me that question, and the first thing that flashed to my mind was my stash, my little brown bag, not unlike what you would, not unlike, somebody homeless addicted to their little brown bag of alcohol or whatever's their stash, their needle, their hair, whatever it is, under my bed that I didn't want anybody to find. If anybody found it, I would have gone postal. And I was hiding it and I was hoarding it. And when I didn't feel good, I went to it when I felt alone. I went to it when my dad was being scary. I went to it when I was bored. I went to it when I needed energy. I mean, there was a lot of reasons that as I travel the threads back of that addiction to sugar, comfort, all kinds of different things, that my bag underneath the bed, and I go, oh, I'm the addict. And it was this huge wake-up call, Luke, that I was so busy judging everybody else about their addictions just because they were, not as socially acceptable. And it's like, oh, addiction behavior is just drugs and alcohol. And it's like, oh, no, it isn't. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. And when it's accompanied, the word I think you've said more than anything, as it relates to your own childhood experience and your own reflection of yourself and your own behavior and also your addictions, is the common word was shame. And that, we look at David Hawkins, vibrational map of consciousness, that's the lowest possible frequency we can feel as humans, is shame. And so that's where I'd like to really look at, not only is it a reason we go to things, but then when we're going to the things, we feel shame about it.
Yeah.
And we feel shame about the pornography, or we don't want anybody to know. And I think that's the common thing.
Yeah, and therein lies the power of the worldwide 12-step movement, of having whatever your particular glitch is and going into a room full of people where everyone's talking openly and honestly about those things. There's an incredible power in the ability to be honest and face your problems, and that power comes from other people doing it, and modeling what that looks like for you. I think that shame is so inherent to all human dysfunction, whether it be addictions or not, because it's a sense of you not belonging and there being something fundamentally wrong with you, versus guilt. I shouldn't have cut that guy off and then flipped him off. It's guilt, but that's about something I did, where shame's about what I am. What I am.
Yeah,
and
it's deeper.
All humans have an inherent need to feel like we belong and we have a place in the world and that we deserve to be here. And so when you're caught in the illusion that there is something wrong with you other than you just being a human, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if you looked at everyone's humanness, we should all be ashamed if that's what you're judging by, right? Because it's like,
we
come
all
on.
make stupid
If you could
mistakes.
see the thoughts going on in everyone's heads at all times, you know, whether they're undressing someone or fantasizing about hitting them in the head with a brick or whatever, you know, we're animals with the prefrontal cortex, you know, and so we're dangerous animals to others and to ourselves, and none of us are exempt from that. And we all have the opportunity, thankfully, to, you know, speaking of angelic, to find that angelic part of ourselves and find a balance between the animal nature, the egoic nature, the thinking mind, all of that we're gifted with in order to keep the human ape meat suit running, so that our soul can be here and have that experience. When we're in addiction, when we're in shame, we're totally cut off from the experience of being who and what we are as consciousness. We're completely enveloped in that self-centeredness and that myopic view that all we are is thoughts, feeling, body, impulses, addiction, shameful feelings, you know, destructive emotions and behavior. We're reduced to that, seemingly, but we actually aren't. And so, in hitting bottom, as you were referring to earlier, for me and most people I know, the bottom isn't what's happening in your life. It's not, oh, I went to jail. Oh, my wife left me. Oh, I, you know, was fired from my position. Those are side effects or consequences of the inner bottom that's going on. The bottom is when none of your coping mechanisms give you the desired result, and all there is the destruction and the wrath of your behavior left. And so at 26 for me, I would have kept going if I still got 5 minutes of relief, but it's as though I became immune to drugs and alcohol. If you would sit with me, I'm nodding off, burning myself with cigarettes. I mean, I look high as shit. You could put me in front of 1,000 people and go, is this guy high? Most definitely. He can barely walk or stand and can't keep his eyes open for more than 10 seconds. And, you know, he has this lit cigarettes that, you know, has a 3-inch ash on it, just nodding out, you know. So I look completely fucked up, but inside my internal experiences, I am stone cold sober in the sense that I'm feeling all of the pain. And that sense of shame is acute and there is no escaping it, regardless of how intoxicated I am in my blood work.
You're still feeling it.
Yeah, so I'm having the physical effects of it, but I'm not getting that spiritual release or that sense of connection that it used to do for me. And this is, you know, this is the course of addiction that could happen to someone in their first year. They just start drinking heavily and they're like, whoa, this isn't doing anything for me anymore, and they quit. Some people end up spending years in prison, and some people die at 26, you know.
With you...
Because they're unable to arrive at that point where there's that still small voice I was referring to earlier, where you're going, the math here just doesn't add up. So what's to be done? And the prospect for me, what was presented to me was that what was missing in my life was God, and that the only solution to my problem was God. And that's a really scary place to arrive at if you're someone who's never had the direct experience of God through spirituality, religion, which I didn't.
In a sober way.
Yeah. Right? So luckily for me, I think I was desperate enough, and I didn't have a lot of deeply embedded, preconceived beliefs or disbelief in God. It was kind of like, well, there's got to be something there, even though I didn't know what it was or how to access it. So I think I was very fortunate in that way, that I was desperate enough that you could have said, listen, the only way out of this is you have to become a Hare Krishna and sell pamphlets at the airport. I mean, I would have signed up. I mean, I would have done anything. That's how desperate I was to save my life.
That sometimes there is that desperation that's the catalyst, you know, to the wake up call, or the I'm going to get the help that I need, or I'm going to join a program, or I'm going to join a treatment center, or I'm going to. And for those things, for those people that are watching or listening, where their addiction isn't necessarily drugs or alcohol, there's other ways to break those patterns. And I want to acknowledge for you, Luke, how far you have come from somebody of what you just described to somebody that has helped others and been a sponsor for other people through their sober journey, and also dove into spirituality, consciousness, and health, and through your podcast leads so many people down that journey. Tools, conversations, naming things, getting with feelings, being vulnerable. I mean, you've gone such a 180. Not just, we talked about this the other day when we were, when you were over the other night for dinner, of just, there's a difference between sobering up and just not being a druggie or not being addicted to XYZ. And there's a whole nother experience of actually living a meaningful, impactful, spiritually conscious life. There's a whole other thing, and that it's not just not drinking, because you can still feel numb to life. But, you can be like, okay, great, I'm not an addict or I'm not addicted to that, but I'm also not alive.
Yeah.
I'm not connected to the divine, or I'm not connected to my purpose, or I'm still disconnected. I'm just not a druggie, or I'm just not an alcoholic, or I'm not as much of an asshole. Great, and there's more. And that is what I think you have really done masterfully well, is not only navigated your self out of physical, emotional, energetic, demise that almost really consumed you, to completely turning that around and becoming a yogi and understanding and deeply teaching in the meditation and consciousness and the psychology of the self. And you've mastered a whole nother level of living a lifestyle that is so far from what you describe. And so if you can do it, my brother, there's hope for all of us that may have an addiction that is a little less treacherous than, heroin. Because most people aren't having that level of addiction. But if you can make that journey from heroin, crack, homelessness, that, to spiritually awake and conscious and able to name it and sober and living an impactful life, helping others do so, there's the hope for all of us.
Yeah, well, you're so right. The drugs and alcohol, or whatever your poison happens to be, and the poison's in the dose too. I'm not someone that runs around telling people not to do drugs. Do whatever, but know that if it gets to the point where it's controlling you and you're not controlling it, you might have an opportunity there. But it really is the symptom.
Yeah.
And when you're hitting a bottom, and everyone in your life, from the courts to your parents to your husband, wife, boss, employees, whatever, are like, hey, you have a problem, and people are confronting you, and you're having a hard time seeing that. Eventually, your own pain leads you to be willing to explore sobriety. It seems like all of your problems, and you were referring to this before, all of your problems are born out of your destructive behavior around your addiction. Mm-hmm. And there's this mirage in early sobriety that if you just get physically sober, you're going to be a great person again. And I remember checking myself into rehab, and I wish I had these journals, but I was like, when I get out, I'm going to put at that point I thought I was going to go to Narcotics Anonymous, because I didn't realize what an alcoholic I was, because I did, most of the destruction came around drugs, it seemed like. But anyway, I'm like, I'm going to get these NA stickers and put them on my car. I'm going to go to meetings all the time. I'm going to do yoga, and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to make money and get a beautiful girlfriend. And I know that I'm a really great person. I just have to extract drugs and alcohol out of my life, and what will be left is an upstanding member of society. And that is so far from the truth. And it was actually a harsh reality in the first 5 years that I was sober, because I had so many goddamn problems still. I was so dysfunctional. I was so dishonest. I was so selfish. I was so phony. I was so rageful and angry, and just, my character was so flawed. I was so far away from who and what I really am, that it was very difficult to actually accept that drugs and alcohol were a symptom of the problem, that the problem was that I was disconnected from God. And so it seems like you just need to kind of chip away at the drugs and alcohol and get rid of that, and then you'll be restored to the amazing person that you think you are, when in fact, you get sober and you're just now a selfish, angry asshole that doesn't drink. There's a term in recovery that, they say, or it's not a term, but a saying of sorts that says, what do you get when you sober up a horse thief? You got a sober horse thief, right? So getting sober doesn't stop me from stealing horses. That's where aligning myself with spiritual principles and using those principles, and this is why the 12 steps as a teaching are so powerful. I mean, I don't think we even see it now because it's just so ubiquitous in our culture. Everyone knows someone that's been in one of the 12-step programs in some degree of separation, right? And there's so many different programs for so many different things. But if you really zoom out, prior to 1935, there was really nothing on the scale of that movement that has transformed not only the lives of the people suffering, but the lives of the family and the lineage to follow. And it's just an incredible teaching, just objectively as a spiritual teaching. And really, what the 12 steps are, and I think why they're so powerful, is they are a divinely guided sequence of spiritual truths or laws or principles that, one, whether they're addicted to their phone or addicted to shooting heroin in their toe, can apply to their life and be restored not only to physical sobriety, but to mental and emotional sobriety and sanity, and use those principles as access points to God. And so each of the principles embedded within those 12 steps are, they're a living energetic field or property that allows us an access point to God, so that you don't have to just go, cool, yeah, I believe in God, great, all my problems are solved. It doesn't work that way. So there's, self-honesty, self-inquiry,
Let's
inventory.
go through them. I'd love to list the 12 because for any, whether it's to the phone, like you said, or to pornography or a workaholic or whatever it is, let's list through those 12. I think because you make a really wonderful point about the sobering up is just one step, because what's underneath it, because we were talking about the initial causes, do I have the tools to help heal my inner child? Do I have the emotional support? Do I have the maturity? Do I have the willingness? Do I have some form of spiritual connection, whether you call that God, yoga, meditation? Do I have some kind of spiritual anchor? And do I have, the people around me that are supporting my sobriety and want me to be that way? And so we're going to talk about lifestyle in a second. But can you just roll through those? Because that way people that are not familiar with the 12 steps can just kind of jot those down or just be aware of this. It's a roadmap. It's a personal development roadmap. So what's the first one?
Well, the premise to set it off is that we use addictions and drugs and alcohol to change our perception of reality, right? And it's a false sense of what reality is. So I walk in a room, I'm feeling self-conscious, I have a couple drinks, now everyone seems much more friendly and I'm way cooler and taller, right? Spiritual principles have the ability to not only change one's perception of reality, but to change reality itself through quantum physics, right? So the way that I think something is and the way that I perceive it to be a reflection of what it ends up actually being. So, in a case of being really emotionally sober, I walk out of here today, I go to the gas station, and everyone is incredibly friendly in there, and the clerk is so helpful, right? Because I'm aligned with principles. I have a sense of humility, I have a sense of acceptance, I have a sense of self-awareness, et cetera, on and on, right? Just embodying spiritual truths or principles. And I go out into the world with that lens and that perception, then the world that I'm creating and co-creating and manifesting is based on my alignment to truth, to those spiritual laws. When I go out into my world and I'm not aligned with truth, then what I'm presented with is a false sense of reality, and that reality is so uncomfortable that I've got to reach for something to change it. So we're always looking for a way to change our perception of reality, but there are ways that are sustainable and there are ways that are destructive and temporary. And so within the 12 steps, there are thousands of principles in the literature of those programs. Each word or each sentence or paragraph can just be imbued with so much spiritual power. And so it's really fascinating when you break it down, because it very much aligns with David Hawkins' map of consciousness, because each of the 12 steps helps you to arrive at a certain level of consciousness or a certain level of awareness or understanding. So when one is seeking to get sober, they are in that state of shame, apathy, and so you have no power. Really what the problem is that an addict or alcoholic lacks the power to change, and the reason that we don't have that power is not because it's not here and available, it's because we're trapped in a lower energy field where we don't have access to that power. But if you can align yourself with the power of self-honesty, admitted that I'm an alcoholic, I can't solve my own problems, essentially, right? So there's honesty. Honesty has much more power than shame or apathy.
Accountability.
Right? Shame is like you feel like shit about yourself. Apathy is you don't even care. If you can get above apathy and realize like what happened for me, there's someone in here, a part of me that's redeemable and worth saving. What is it that is my problem? So admitting that I'm powerless over something in step one inherently means that there is some power that's available somewhere that I just don't seem to have access to. So I'm powerless, but it doesn't mean that God is powerless.
And it's a shift from, that it's a shift from futility to acknowledgement, like lying and deception and really denial to a level of acceptance and honesty, of just self-honesty. And you were talking earlier about this whole journey of and I know that there's accountability where you make amends, as part of the process. And you also got to this point, like later, then there's forgiveness, which is a much higher frequency of going back to that part of you, going back to a perpetrator or a situation where we're in that higher frequency of heart forgiveness for the situation and the experience, or a forgiveness of self. But like those are much higher frequencies that are part of the process.
Yeah, all of the spiritual principles, whether they come from the 12 steps or any, it's not like it's not like God's truth showed up in 1935 and that's the only place they are.
Right.
They just happen to show up and come through one particular guy in a specific order. And the order is what's important, right? Because you could tell an alcoholic, you know what, you're inherently selfish and self-centered. The key to your liberation is helping other people. That's too fast. You skipped a bunch of steps. That's why that's in the 12. But the first one is admitted we're powerless over alcohol, and that our lives have become unmanageable. And this is so beautiful and so profound, because I'm admitting with humility that I can no longer manage my own life. And then you look further, what is my life? Is it the parking tickets, the jail, the probation, the divorce? No, that's my living. My life is who I am inside. In other words, I no longer can manage the way that I feel and the way that I perceive reality, the thoughts that I have, the feelings I have, and thus as a result of behavior I have. So I'm powerless over this behavior, call it alcohol, call it, driving too fast, whatever your poison is, that I in and of myself lack the power to change that thing and my behavior around that thing. And furthermore, I alone, with the power that I have, cannot manage my life. The inner life, my inner experience, or the result of that inner experience, which is my behavior. So that's step one.
This is acknowledging so that we can allow some help in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's humility.
That's clearing the egoic, prideful, hard-headed, dumbass self out of the way just enough where you get into step two, that I can come to believe that a power greater than my power can restore me to sanity. And there's so much to unpack in each one of these. Beautiful. And I did this for years and years and years of study. I mean, it's funny because I couldn't even think of what the first step was for a second. I think because I don't even think about it like that anymore. Right. It's just how it's the guiding force and life, the guiding light of my life. But in step two, it's that I come to believe that a power greater than myself, so there's another power here. And this is where you get into open-mindedness, where you consider, maybe I'm not the be-all, end-all here, that perhaps there is some other help available to me, and then come to believe that once I find that power that is greater than the power that I possess solely on my own, that power can restore me to sanity. And then you start to define what is sanity. Sanity in the dictionary is soundness of mind. Even if you Google the definition of sobriety, most of the definition is around sound thinking. It's not even about abstinence from drugs or alcohol. Sobriety is like sober as a judge. What that means is you have integrity. Sobriety is integrity, right? And that's why there's so many levels and depth to the concept of being sober: emotional, physical, mental, sexual, financial, on and on and on, where you have soundness and guiding principles in all of those different areas of life. So in step 2, now I have an access point to the power that I didn't have in step 1. Step 1, I don't have the power because obviously I keep picking that thing up again. Yeah. But I can avail myself to a power. And then step 3 is made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Now that in 2, I've acknowledged there is a power, and I've opened my mind to the idea that I might be able to access that power and use it to change myself. Now I'm going to make a decision that I'm actually going to turn my will and my life over to that power of God as I understand God. And I understand God as being a power. That's how it's named in step 2. So in step 3, I'm actually making a decision, and nothing happens until you make a decision. We can talk about going to California right now. We're not doing anything until we make a decision to go to California. So I'm now making a decision that I'm going to be turning my life over. I'm going to be presenting my life to this power. And my life is, as I said earlier, the internal experience of how I perceive my reality and the results in my physical material world. That's my life, and my will is what I want to happen. So right now, I'm turning my will over to God if we're supposed to move to Sedona. I mean, this is how I live my life. And I think I want that house right there. I want that view. I want the rocks. I want, it's like, that's my will. It's like when someone leaves a will, your last will and testament, what is that? That's what you want. That's your desire.
So with this, there's a reclamation of self and a reconnection. It sounds like there's also this reconnection to higher power and a resolution, like a resolve of will.
Yeah.
And a choice to step in, a choice to step up, a choice to allow. And like that's, I think that choice, let's say as we're here having this podcast around the holidays of just like, and people may be in this indulgent space and put on a few extra pounds, and there's that honesty that says, okay, I might be out of control with how much I put on my plate or whatever that is saying, hey, I might need some help. And that willingness to ask, hey, I might need a personal trainer. In business, I might need a business coach. In finances, I'm not good with my finances. I might need a financial coach. In this case, I might need a spiritual guide, a spiritual practice, a spiritual teacher. If there's a deeper addiction with a substance, hey, I might need a sponsor. I might need a program so that my higher self, my higher will, my higher divine plan can have an expression, can have its path that it's meant to have here. Yeah. And that it seems like it's a journey of empowerment. Yeah. Can we spend a few minutes? Okay. Yeah. You want to share something? Then I have another question.
You really got me fired up, and I don't know how much time we have, but like going through the 12 steps would probably be a 5-hour podcast in and of itself. But I would like to continue on with that, and if I could do so in a concise way.
Let's do it.
Because it's not something I typically talk about. One of the traditions and a spiritual principle within those groups is the principle of anonymity, right? And so, like Alcoholics Anonymous, it's called Anonymous because you don't go tell people you're in it, and that has to do with just social stigma and things in the 30s, but there's also a tradition that you remain autonomous at the level of press, radio, and films. And so I've always been I have so much reverence and respect for those teachings that you don't want to go on camera and say, hey, I'm a member of this or that group. So as a result, it's something that I kind of allude to because I honor that. But at the same time, it would be disingenuous for me to pretend like that teaching as a whole was not part of my experience and really the foundation of my transformation. I mean, that's where it all comes from. So I just like to throw that out there because I used to get pissed when a celebrity would go on TV and be like, oh, I'm in AA. And I'd be like, you fucking asshole. Like, so you go relapse next week and end up in court. Then if someone's thinking about getting sober by that means, now they're not going to do it because it didn't work for you.
Right.
Or people just don't like you because they think you're an asshole, so they won't go get help and save their life because they're like, that guy, I'm not going where he goes. So I just like to acknowledge the anonymity, but I'm not claiming to be a member of any particular group. I'm speaking about the 12 steps as a spiritual teaching, just like you could talk about the Course in Miracles or any other great teaching, right? So step 2 is really about open-mindedness, because now and there's inherently humility in that. I'm going like, well, maybe there is another power outside of just my power, which I've admitted in one is limited, and I'm going to get to know that power. And the beautiful thing about true open-mindedness is that it's not only letting go of your erroneous thoughts and views on the world and your life and getting rid of bad information, it's also about letting new information in. It's a two-way street. I always think of it as like a saloon door, that swings both ways, because many people think about open-mindedness as being socially liberal or something like that. Like, live and let live, do your thing, marry whoever,
This is being open
to a
higher power.
This is letting new information in, but it's also going, you know what? Maybe everything I've ever thought about my life and the world is wrong. Let's just consider that for a moment, right? So there's this beautiful open-mindedness, and then that takes you into 3, where you're making the decision to turn your will and your life over to God, which is really tough to do if you haven't had step 1 to kick your ass and go, damn, I failed at life. 2, maybe there's another way to find sanity in my life. 3, making that decision. And then 3 is a willingness to continue on adopting spiritual principles in your life because you've made that decision to turn your will, your desires, what you want to happen over to God, and then your life being the result of the things that you want. So it's a huge surrender. And surrender is the key, in my experience, to overcoming anything and everything that's troubling you or got you stuck. It's surrendering to the idea that you need help and that there is a power there that can help you. And then in step 4, you're making a personal inventory of all of the people that you've harmed along the way, and also listing all of your fears and making an inventory of your sexual behavior and all of these things, right? And so the magic in that is a deeper level of self-honesty and really putting it on paper and expressing it or pressing it out in a concrete, physical way.
Gotta look at it.
And looking at, this is who I've become as a result of my life experience and the decisions that I've made in my addiction. And in that inventory, the most beautiful thing that comes in these columns, there's a little format you follow, and in the inventory, I think the most profound part is the part which is your part. I have a resentment against my boss because he fired me, that asshole, and I never let it go, or my brother stole my girlfriend, or whatever your grievance is. And then in that part, when you put on paper and you have started to develop some self-honesty, you see, well, I was late a lot.
Kind of didn't show up.
Yeah,
kind of stole money.
I did neglect my girlfriend and used to just put her off on my brother when I, whatever. But it's in taking responsibility for your life and the decisions that you've made. And responsibility is so empowering.
This for us now, for everybody that's on the personal development journey, this is essential, because this is where we get to look at, okay, with this breakup, with whatever, what's my part? What's my part? Doesn't matter if it's 1% or 91%, like accountability. Like, what is my part? And I think that that's a powerful tool for everybody, sober or not, is to look at every experience. What's my participation?
That's where the
and
freedom.
Like a level of honesty. Yeah. And that was the healing journey with my dad. Is that okay? Yes, he X, Y, Z, whatever. He did this. Yes, and you know what? When I'm accountable in response, I did this. I threw daggers. I said hurtful things. I closed my heart. And that level of honesty came later in my life, after I looked at my little inner child and working on healing her wounds about the experiences I had with my dad, it was also like, and you know what, I said and did some hurtful things too. I was a bully also. It isn't just pointing, and there's a level of powerful freedom in any personal development experience. What's my part? Whether it's a divorce, whatever it is. Okay, we got to roll through these. So tell us more.
So
accountability.
Once one has taken responsibility and really looked at the way they operate in the world by doing inventory, and the work of Byron Katie is really amazing for this too, of just really questioning your thoughts, questioning your mind, not just taking everything you think or feel to be true, when in fact most of it's not when you really dig. So in the step 4 of taking a personal inventory, it's a moral inventory. It's looking at right and wrong. I mean, there's a bit of duality in it, but there is a path where you're doing good and a path where you're doing harm. And so it's really taking a look at that and the empowerment that comes from taking responsibility. That's where the freedom from all resentment comes from, is in that forgiveness. And the forgiveness comes when I see, okay, there was a decision that I made based on a selfish interest that put me in the position to be hurt. And it doesn't, we're still acknowledging that someone else may have harmed us, that they had a part, etc. But that's not the important part. To become free, I have to see what I did and then be able to forgive myself for whatever I did that motivated me to put myself in front of that speeding train. Mm-hmm. And then also within the 4th step is looking at your instincts, which is really fascinating. And that was huge for me to start to see what impulses arise in me when one of my instincts is threatened, and that those instincts are God-given. There's nothing wrong with having instincts, but when they are unmonitored and allowed to just run awry, then we're flipping the person off on the road, because they just threaten our security instinct because they're going to scratch our car. And then sexual impulses, desire, all these kind of things that are here for our survival, when they become warped and are not monitored and controlled, they wreak havoc on our lives and other people's lives. And that cycle of the sequence of events that follow from having unmonitored instincts leads one life to become unmanageable and painful and back into drugs. So this is all, like, you can see you're doing the inner work to help yourself feel more comfortable and to naturally change your perception of the world, to see the world as safe and non-threatening and a place of opportunity rather than a place of my eventual demise. Right. And then in step 5, we're going in actually looking at that inventory and becoming ready to go out and make amends, which comes later on. So it's like a deeper looking at that, and we're sharing that with someone else now. I'm saying, like, these aren't just the things I'm looking at. I'm going to sit down with you or an advisor and be like, hey, I wrote all this stuff. I'm going to admit to myself and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs, meaning the exact nature of where I was in error, where I was thinking in error, feeling in error, acting in error. It's all on paper now. It's not just in my head. I'm going to actually go share that with someone, and specifically with God. And then to speed through them, in 6, I'm going to now be willing to surrender those defects of character. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say, wow, I'm a really angry, hostile person, and I'm actually willing to change. Mm-hmm. And then in 7, looking at our shortcomings, the things where we're falling short. So step 7 is about humility, of knowing that I'll never achieve perfection, but it's my job to aim toward it, right?
This sounds like this is where, okay, if I don't know how to communicate with my partner, I might need to learn how to communicate with my partner.
Yeah, totally.
If I don't know how to hold space for my emotions without aggression, onto somebody else, then I might need to learn how to have more emotional intelligence or learn how to hold space. This sounds like I need a tool to fill the gap. I need to learn a skill. Yeah. I need to figure out how to manage stress or understand finances or be more responsible or whatever it is. And that becomes the improvement part, where I'm taking action instead of like, okay, well, I don't know how to manage money, or I'm a jerk. It's like, okay, well, what can I do differently?
Yeah,
let's put something in its place.
Very well said.
And the same thing where people land here in the healing practice. It's like, okay, you might be having relationship conflict because of a core thing or an addiction, and you also might not have the tool. It's probably all three. And so let's get at the core wound. Let's also look at what is the habit and pattern that's in the way, and also what is a tool that you can implement that is going to make you better at this and improve your ability to whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, shortcomings, areas
Good.
in which I'm falling short. There's things that I can now add in now that we've cleared away the things that don't need to be there, which is all of those character defects, which are just kind of instincts gone awry: jealousy, anger, vindictiveness, all that shit, right? Phoniness, just inauthentic, just
nobody's any of that.
all the grossness that's not you. And
Nobody's ever,
so you're kind of left with like, well, okay, what is there to do? And that's step 7. And then step 8, we're making a list of everyone we've ever harmed, and we're becoming willing to go out and directly make amends. And this is where it gets scary for most of us that have been real assholes for a long time. And then in step 9, you're making direct amends to the people we've harmed whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Exactly.
which is a really beautiful principle in and of itself, because it not only applies to, you know, our selfish need, like, okay, I'm going to tell my wife I cheated on her because it's going to make me feel better, right? Which is inherently, you're still going back to that selfishness that it comes out of your alcoholism or your addiction. It's that self-centeredness where you're just thinking about yourself and yourself only. So in some cases, an amends might not be made because it would cause more harm to the other person or to you. Like you're not going to walk yourself into court and go, you know, Judge, I used to sell coke, you know, because you'd be harming your kid's life. Now you have to provide for them, etc. So there's an intelligence and a wisdom in that, to where now you've been through those other steps to the point where you can be honest with yourself and discerning with yourself enough to know, if I go right this wrong with someone, is it going to be in the highest good for all?
I want to address
Or is it
this
just to make me feel better?
for sure. I want to address this because without the 12 steps, this is something that naturally on my personal development journey, that it just came to be the time to say I'm sorry to my father.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea about any of the 12 steps. It was more like for me to be in integrity with healing this relationship with my dad. In this part of a making amends, a couple things needed to be in alignment. First of all, I needed to be in alignment that I'm not seeking him to apologize to me. This is not an amends with strings attached. Mm-hmm. It's not like, well, I'm sorry, so. It was just like, I need to, right?
Do you have anything to say now that I've apologized?
Your turn.
Yeah.
This was really something like I needed to be in my center in enough, saying that I'm not attached to his response to my apology. He doesn't have to accept it. He can walk away angry. He can tell me to fuck off. Whatever he decides is his response, and I'm not accountable for it. So there was something that I needed to also not have an agenda when I came to the amends. I'm making amends for my part, whether they accept it or not. I can't control that, and there is a healing desire to sit. When I'm apologizing, I'm also acknowledging I left a wound in your heart, and there is a healing opportunity that the other person. It's an invitation for them to heal. Whether they take it or not, and they still want to keep their heart closed and they still want to be angry, is not within my means. But it does invite a healing to happen.
Yeah.
And I needed to stand in that place and be willing to say, I'm sorry for the times that I hurt you, Dad. And be able to be like in my center about it. What I wasn't expecting, Luke, was for him to say, you forgot about the time you did this. And I was like, don't take the bait. Like, use all your tools right now. Stay centered, keep your heart open, be compassionate. He's just wounded, he's hurt, and he's right. I did forget about the time that wasn't on my list. And I said, you know what, Dad, I was shaking because I was gonna go into that little girl that would contract, run and hide, or that kind of more adolescent that learned how to fight and throw daggers. I'm like, I was trained by the masters. I know how to fight and throw daggers. And so, But that's the part that I'm trying to amend right now. So I don't want to default back into that part of me that is going into attack mode. And it was like, if I hadn't done my personal work to learn other tools for calming my inner, like knowing myself and being connected for sure to a higher power, there's no way I could keep in my calmness. I would have gone back into the inner child, triggered into smallness and fear, hiding behind a couch, or going into my attack mode. And I'm wanting to evolve beyond both of those modalities. And it was so powerfully healing for both of us. And it doesn't mean he changed a damn thing or was accountable for anything, but I changed my response to him, that when he would get angry, now I could hold a different space. Yeah. And I could stay in that vibration of compassion and forgiveness. And if I know who I am, then I'm not connected to his response. Even if he doesn't acknowledge or he gets angry, there's a disassociation from his choice, which then really does create amends.
Because
totally. Amends doesn't mean that they're cooperating.
And if you think about the word amends, to amend, to mend something, to fix something, to put it back together, something that's fragmented. So there's a karmic implication to making amends, and it's so true what you said, that it's not for the other person. I think sometimes when we feel guilt, we think, I want to apologize so that person feels better because we've been selfish.
It becomes our
but
agenda.
Really, it's the healthiest selfishness to make amends, to clear your own karma, and then, have the respect to allow the person that you're making amends to process however they're going to process. If they're at a place where they can offer forgiveness and make a joint amends, wow, cool, let's sing Kumbaya, this is amazing. But if they're not, then the opportunity to step out of codependency and allow someone to have their own autonomy and their own experience and their own karma, because now they're holding the karma of not having forgiven us, even though we've acknowledged our wrongdoing.
Which is choice. And I get to stay in that vibration of compassion, that he doesn't have to forgive me because I've forgiven me and I've forgiven him. Whether he forgives himself and he forgives me isn't up to me. And that's on him. But what it did change is the dynamic of our relationship. He got even, as he aged, he got even more ornery because he was scared about the afterlife and was dealing with his own challenges. And that amends allowed a deeper level of compassion to continue in our relationship. And he would, keep testing me to see, are you still going to be able to hold compassion when I do this or do that? And to his dying day, and a beautiful opportunity to hold space for his transition with my heart open, not with the little girl, not with a closed heart, not angry, but just grace. Okay, so 9? We're on 9.
That's 9, making amends. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So the inventory in 4 was just a peek. Okay, let's look at who we've become in terms of our character, how we operate in the world, our value system, our morals, our integrity or lack thereof. We're admitting the things that we want to get rid of, and then we're looking to the things that we want to have more of, right? And then having developed to that point, we make our amends. And in 10, it's remaining watchful. It's continuing to take personal inventory, which for me is not a rating thing anymore. It's just sitting in this conversation, I'm taking inventory, what my motive is to say this or to not do that. It's just constantly being self-aware and present to one's motives, the micro decisions or macro decisions one is making. And then when I'm wrong, to promptly admit it to myself and sometimes to someone else.
What I love about this one is that it doesn't allow things to build up under the carpet that we just ignore. It's like immediately, let's look at it and transmute it right now. It's like, okay, I screwed up, I tripped over the thing, I lied, whatever, let me be accountable immediately. And that, I think that getting in that habit is, whether it's I raised my voice in an argument, I say, hey babe, I'm sorry. I didn't eat, or I'm tired, I didn't sleep last night, let me try that again, or that was from a triggered place, I'm gonna try that again. And to just get in the practice of course correcting in the moment,
Yeah,
which
it's
is a
beautiful.
mastery skill. And,
It's
and I
beautiful.
love that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that was in the
Yeah.
in the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Okay, give us.
So when
bring us home.
when we're wrong, promptly admit it. Which to me, wrong. It's not like right or wrong. It's when I'm in error. When I'm seeing things outside of their actual reality.
Yeah.
When I've become delusional about something, I promptly admit, oh wow, I'm mistaken. I'm seeing this thing in a way that's not really there. You know, someone says something and I take it to mean something. I'm in error because it didn't mean that. I promptly admit to myself that I don't know that that's what they meant, you know? So it's like it is an instantaneous, ongoing, in the moment inventory to keep you clean and to keep you between the rails. Then step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. You know, it's about, and I'm paraphrasing some of these as I go, the 12-step folks will know when I'm doing so, but it's continuing through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. And
This is, every spiritual practice has this come to your spirit or your time with universe, whether that's daily meditation, whether that's prayer and mantra, whether that's prayer, whether that's scripture, whether that's mantra. And so every spiritual religion has some form of communion with self and the divine.
Yeah.
You know, and it looks different for each religion, but I appreciate that this is saying, hey, staying connected to the divine higher power or your soul's knowing is part of a daily practice to keep you centered.
Yeah, and I love that this one has the principle of improving. So there's no status quo. There's not like, oh, that God thing? Yeah, I got that figured out. Yeah, I learned to meditate. I pray here and there. It's improving that relationship, and it is a relationship that's like a relationship one would have with a person sitting right there, and it's a relationship with God, and using whatever means necessary. And that step also opens up a lot of exploration, and that's, I did Vedic meditation. I went to India, Kundalini yoga, plant medicines. I mean, I've, done anything I've ever heard of that improves your relationship with God. I've done it. If it's out there, I've tried it, or else I just haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
And and the therapy and all the different ways that we can heal and improve that contact. And then step 12 is where we become of service. We commit our lives to helping other alcoholics and addicts and also just people at large, because it's having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps.
And it's our responsibility
Yeah.
if we wake up, if we are more right of center, if we are more plugged in, if we are more stable, if we are more connected, if we have the resources, the mental fortitude, the integrity. It is our ethical responsibility to turn back and help our brothers and sisters that are lost, and so many helped me when I was lost that I wouldn't be here without.
Oh man.
I mean,
God.
and it's
Totally.
that, in Peru we call this the aini, the reciprocity. It's not out of obligation. It's more out of a flow, that there's times in which where I'm going to be on the boat instead of rowing, I'm going to be pouring water on the boat. And sometimes, I'm going to be the one, taking the water and pulling buckets off the boat. Sometimes I'm going to be rowing. And acknowledging that as a community, there's times in which we're all going to play the weak link. The court jester, there's times of us where we're always going to be the one that needs support by the community, and it's okay. Then as that shifts and you learn and grow, then how can we turn around and help our brothers and sisters that are needed? And that's what you are doing right now. That's the place I'm in right now. And that it doesn't mean we don't still have the things that we're tripping over, and our little addictions that are pulling our attention, or the times in which I don't need to talk to God today, or I don't need to, I've got life figured out. And there's just this continued beautiful journey of remembering and coming back. And I'm so grateful that you stayed. And I mean stayed. I know that there was probably more than one opportunity for you to check out and just not be here. And this is for all of us, when one person wakes up and stays and plugs into life. What your podcast has 6 million downloads. And so you're living step 12. Brother.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to really celebrate
Thank you.
that. And that's for all of us, that none of us, wherever we are on the journey, wherever we feel lost or we don't feel like we have anything to contribute, that is just not true, because we all have something to contribute. It's going to look different for all of us at different phases of our life, but we all have something to give back from the pains that we've overcome, from the lessons we've learned, from the summits we've, achieved, and also what we've navigated along the way and learned along the way. And so you have certainly done that, and I just have tremendous respect for, what you've navigated and the truth that you're bringing out through your podcast and your services. And so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
What else is there to do?
Right?
You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, God, I just think about the men that helped me, especially in recovery, a couple in particular. I mean, I really don't think I would have made it. I would have stayed sober, and if I didn't stay sober, I mean, people like me don't end up living very long, or you end up pushing a shopping cart,
Then you're just a statistic. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, it's because you're not meant to be a statistic. You're not meant to be like a memorial of like, wow, a life unlived. Like a life, you're listening and watching, it's because there's some addiction, some little thing, some big thing that has a hold of a part of your life and your mission that is keeping you from your greatness, or keeping you from really deeply stepping in and serving. And so we're just here to acknowledge we're going through it too.
I had a funny thing I want to share with you real quick recently. So I smoked cigarettes from like 16 years old till, I don't know, probably I was 40 or something. Maybe 10 years ago, I think I quit. 10 years ago. I must have been 40, 41. I'm 50 now. So it's a long time smoking cigarettes, man. It's just, I don't know if I would have been able to get sober if you couldn't drink coffee and smoke cigarettes, Sit outside the church, just. Then at some point, I quit smoking. I was given the gift of grace, and I put cigarettes down. I finally just quit cold turkey one day. I just was gone, poof, just like drugs and alcohol were for me. It was a divine intervention. And then at some point, a couple years into that, I was on a cruise and someone gave me a Cuban cigar, and I thought, my little voice was like, Luke, don't do it. That's nicotine. And I was like, well, that's not a cigarette. I justified it, smoked a cigar. Then ended up smoking cigars every day for like 4 years. I smoked 3 or 4 cigars a day, and anyone that smoked a Cuban cigar knows they're strong. I got re-addicted. Then they were too expensive, so I started smoking cigarettes. Then I started dipping, chewing tobacco. Then I'm walking around literally like, I didn't want to buy cigarettes because I was in denial that I was addicted. This is gross, I'm sorry, it's just the truth. I'd be walking into 7-Eleven or something, I'd see a nice fat butt on the ground or in the ashtray, I'd pick it off the ground, just smoke it, Attaboy. Became so addicted. Then finally I quit that, and I realized, I just can't touch nicotine in any form. And at that point, I'm, I don't know, over 15 years sober or something. So, all right, man, I can't do nicotine. Years go by, 9 years go by. Last year I'm in Costa Rica, and I was in a ceremony, and they have these mapachos, these, Nicotina rustica, wild tobacco. It's part of the ceremony. I thought, wow, it's part of the ceremony. When in Rome.
You were so sneaky, right?
Yeah, first night, man, we're in the Shipibo ceremony, and there's dark. It's just dark. They're singing Icaros. There's medicine, and you just see these little cherries.
Yep.
And you smell that beautiful tobacco. And I noticed the next day I went back in the Maloka, and I'm looking around for butts.
So
and then I left Costa Rica, and I was like, okay, I'm fine. Then I came back home, and I was fine. And then I remembered I had a Cuban cigar in my freezer for the zombie apocalypse. I saved it.
Just in case.
Yeah, just if the end of the world happens, I'm going out with a Cuban in my hand. And I smoked it, and I was fine. A few months go by, I went to a party. Someone gave me a Cuban, smoked it, I was fine. I thought I was so fine. I started going to the cigar store.
There he goes again.
And buying Cubans again, and then started smoking, 2 or 3 cigars again. And then, as you were mentioning, people around us, if they love us, they'll let us know. And my lovely Allison was like, hey,
what's up?
Do you? But notice the cigar thing's getting pretty consistent here. Are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll quit sometime. and then started to become bothersome to her because I'm smelly. We can't
Right.
kiss now. It's just,
Right.
I'm gone in the yard for, it takes an hour to smoke a cigar. Anyway, I had become re-addicted to nicotine, and I wanted to do an experiment in hitting a bottom. And my bottom was Allison eventually just being like, dude, this is not happening. Like, I didn't start going out with a smoker. You didn't smoke. It was a bait and switch. Now you're like a full-on nicotine smoker guy,
It's not okay.
Yeah, it's just, she's like, it's just really hard for me. And I could see her pain, and I love her so much, and I want to see her in pain. And frankly, I'm a biohacker, man. I'm into health. Like, nicotine in small doses is good for you. Big doses, really toxic.
And it depends. It may not be good for you.
Yeah,
It depends.
for me, it's not
right?
good for
It's
me.
not
I'm
good, right?
tired. I'm always craving
Right.
it. And now I'm doing the nicotine gum. I'm just like, dude, I'm almost 24 years sober, and like something got me again. Fuck no. So I told Allison, I said, when we get to Sedona, I'm going to stop, which would have been November 1st. We got here, and I thought, let me see if I can do this without going to a Nicotine Anonymous or making
Right,
a big
right.
production out of it. I wonder if I actually have the resources now to just surrender something and just be done. And I came out here, and I just stopped, cold turkey, just done, didn't think about it, didn't talk about it until now. And there's been a few times, I'll be honest, I'm like, oh man, I wish I had some nicotine gum right now, or be nice to sit out here and smoke a cigar, but it's just a fleeting thought. And it just goes to show, not only can we overcome these addictions, but they can come back,
In other forms.
Yeah, and once you've kind of created the groove for that habit, man, it's so easy to fall back into it. But it was a beautiful example of having done all of the work inside that we've been talking about, to really look at what is it that's causing me to feel uncomfortable, and why am I going to that as an escape, because the satisfaction of fulfilling a nicotine addiction in that moment, it's not that you enjoy the nicotine. That's the weird thing about smoking. It's that you enjoy plugging the leak in the craving.
Right.
You have a craving because you're now addicted to nicotine physically, and it's not that the nicotine feels good. It's just that satisfying the craving. Just like if you didn't have a mosquito bite, scratching your arm doesn't really feel very good. If you have a mosquito bite, it feels amazing. So what's the itch?
This is a great way to dive into what's your itch, what's the void, what are you feeling, why the reach, and is it medicine, or is this a journey of a poison?
Yeah.
So
and
thank you for that level of honesty.
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny thing to go through, because I'm watching myself do it, and I know that I'm doing it. I'm like, I'm gonna just do this and see what happens.
Right.
And it was the same thing. It was like, this thing's controlling me. Like, my whole day revolves around, like, where'd I leave that cigar? Is the store closed? I got to get more. I order them online. They're taking too long.
Right.
It's like I'm back in that cycle. I'm going, fuck, no, I did not come this far to be controlled by a leaf. It's just,
what are you controlled by? That's
Yeah.
that's what I want to leave people with, is like, hey,
Yeah.
look at what you're feeling, that kind of, where's my phone? And I feel it right now, like, where's my phone? Like, that's where I would say what it is for me today, where's my phone? Or like,
Yeah.
if the internet isn't working yesterday, the internet wasn't working, I was like, and it's like, okay, this is for all of us, because you're still dancing with different things, I'm still dancing with different things, is to be like, let's just have a check-in with where there is an anxiety with a substance, an experience, a technology, a relationship, a person, and let's walk through the 12 steps.
Yeah, I mean, really what I arrived at in summary was, in looking at the why, there's the what, which is this behavior that's becoming annoying and self-destructive on some level. The why, and really it has a lot to do with what's going on in the world right now, and just the influx of communism and all the things that we're witnessing. I'm not going to get into all that, but it's just the lockdown and the masks.
It's just whether for you at the beginning as a child it was as a physical or sexual stressor, and today our stressor might be financial, it might be relationship stress, it might be collective, political, financial, and it's just like, look at where the stresses, whatever nature, are bringing about some need to fix, feel, numb.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to tell everybody, thank you for everything that you shared today. I'd love for you to tell everybody where they can find you, because I'm so excited to share your pod. I'm going to be on your podcast too.
Yeah.
So check that out. That'll be coming soon.
Yeah.
But tell everybody where they can find your amazing podcast and your socials and everything.
I will do that. So my podcast is called The Life Stylist, 3 words, The Life Stylist. It's a take on my former career as a fashion stylist, whole other story. But it helps people learn how to design a life. So you take these different truths, these principles, elements of spirituality, biohacking, health, put all these pieces together via the guest, and that's really the crown jewel of everything that I do. The Lifestylist Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Luke Storey. We're live streaming right there on my account, so those that are following know that already. And then the mothership is lukestorey.com, and that's where you can find all of the past podcast episodes and videos, and I have an online store where I curate all of my favorite biohacking and healing technologies and supplements and all that stuff. So yeah, that's where I live.
You are the master. I swear, I love your podcast because there's always some new supplement. I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to help with energy or focus or digestion, or that technology is a good tool. Hadn't thought about that. You know, who do I know that has that technology, or where can I find that? So you're bringing the latest and greatest to mainstream, and you've been a real visionary for bringing tools and resources to creating a thriving, vibrant, conscious, woke, joyful life.
Thank you. And, when we do part 2, next time maybe we can talk about all of the physical support, and just optimizing your body that supports your, not only with addictions, but just your vitality and gives you the physical strength and ability to do the spiritual work.
Well, because when there's a trauma or when there's a pain, in whatever form, the nervous system is really just fritzed.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely would love to look at how do we support and reset the nervous system after trauma or after addiction, dances with addiction, or when we've had a certain substance in our body for a long time, or a certain experience that has left us with residue, physical residue that our physical body actually needs to be supported to bring the physical body back into alignment. So thank you so much, brother. I'm excited to we will. I just feel like we will. We'll just keep chatting and talking about that. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Go check out Luke and all of his details. You can always find me at shamangelichealing.com. We have a free gift for you, so definitely check it out, because we talked so much about the inner child healing. I want to give a free guided visualization for inner child, healing that inner child and going to support what they're experiencing. So go and download that free gift. Please share this conversation. Everybody is dancing with some form of addiction, and I'm sure there's some pearl, some insight that is valuable for everybody you know. So thank you in advance for sharing this podcast with others, so that more people get the tools and resources that they need. Thank you, Luke, and thank you for tuning in. This has been a mega conversation, and so acknowledging that if you're still listening, if you're still watching, that there's something here for you. So take what we shared and do something with it. Take the next step in your journey of releasing anything that's holding on to you, that is holding you back. Anything you want to say before we...
That's it. I want to say thanks for joining, and no matter how dark it gets, always know that there is hope. If you're someone that's suffering from addictions in the way that we talked about today, trust me, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes it's just a matter of asking for help. That was my story. I prayed to God. Woke up in rehab one morning, didn't believe in God, prayed to God anyway because I had no other choice, and I had a spiritual experience that rendered me sober and gave me the beginning of the path that I'm on now. So, don't lose faith. There's always a way out.
There's always a way. And we're living examples of that, because both of us have had all kinds of different addictions and traumas. And so thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We support you, and go forth and shine. Have an amazing, epic day.